Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for having us here. I'm Brian Crissey. This is my wife and partner, Pam Meyer Crissey, and Sandy T. over here. The three of us are going to be talking to you today about co-creating agroglyphs. And we're using the term agroglyph because not all of the crop circles are circles and not all of them are in crops. We'll talk about what we know now and how we know it, and we think some important things have happened, and we are going to relate those to you. This picture here that you see is a thing that happened in the desert of Oregon in 1990. You might call it a desert glyph. There's not a crop in sight. It was 13 miles across. It was 3 inches deep, and nobody left the dirt. Some people claimed that they had done that, but they couldn't get more than a ½ inch into the hard pan cover of it. So it's not all crop circles, but it's all related. Here's a couple of lovebirds at a stone inside of Stonehenge. We were able to get inside of Stonehenge on our trip to England a few weeks ago. We know that we live in the physical world, and that is pretty much managed by the left brain. That'll be me. And we also have a metaphysical world, and that'll be managed on the right side of the brain, and that'll be Pam and Sandy. Both of these are valid and complementary approaches to a very important issue that we have in front of us. One of the questions that comes up is, how old are these agroglyphs, crop circles, whatever? Well, here is one of the earliest printed indications that these things have been going on for a while. This is a woodcut from 1678. They, of course, blamed it on the devil. What else? People talk in terms of the understandings of the age they're in. What is that? Geoglyph, maybe. Nazca lines. How old are those? The Nazca people died out about 700 AD. Notice some similarities here between this design and that. I mean, the tail of the hummingbird, I mean, there's some kind of a relationship there. We don't know very much about these Nazca lines. We don't know if these were made for visitors from space or by visitors from space or whatever, but you can't understand them from the ground, and that much they have in common with the agroglyphs that you will experience with us today. Through this presentation, you will see some things like this. These are, especially the last 4 digits there, like 0909, these are indicators of essence bottles over on the table there that contain water that has been energized by the energy in those particular crop circles or agroglyphs. So if you feel particularly drawn to one of these, you might take note of which one that is. You can find it over there, and you can sit with it and have some fun with it maybe. So what has happened in recent years in this issue? Certainly the frequency of these agroglyphs has been increasing since 1987 and has increased over the years. The green ones here are England, the yellow ones are in the Wiltshire County where we went, and the blue ones here, which are increasing now, are from the rest of the world. This is an early picture, 1978, one of the first of the modern editions of crop circles. And it's not only in England. There's been some 3,000 reported in England, but they've been reported in 50 nations or more. This is a graph here of from 1988 to 2008, England and other countries. You see the presence in the other countries is increasing. This year in England, there was a bit of a dearth of appropriate things to study, and the reason seems to be that climate change and destabilization, global warming, all that stuff, it just rained like it did here, and the crops got washed out, and they plowed them under and reseeded them. Well, if you're going to do that, they're not going to be right at the right time of the year to do this kind of artistic work in. So there are fewer of them, but Italy had nice weather, and we see a lot more showing up in Italy and other places. People get in little airplanes or helicopters, and they fly over the area looking for things, and they take pictures, aerial photographs. and then they radio it in or they send it in, and it shows up on the cropcircleconnector.com website. Everybody knows about it. The directions are sent out. You get it on GPS, and off you go, and people flood into the fields and step on the crops, and the farmers get mad and cut it all down. So that's what happens. Okay. It's not just other countries. These are from the United States. In Tennessee, I'll go back and get that. In Tennessee, this was 2007, 2011, and this year, May 13th, 2013. So it does seem to be a widespread global process that we are being a part of here. This is the trend of American agroglyphs up through 2008, and you can see the trend is up over time, and we could update that as soon as we have more data. The question is, of course, are these naturally occurring? That was the first thought that a lot of people had back in 1978 when they were fairly simple circles. And by 1989, there were complex laydown patterns occurring that would not probably be the interest of whirlwinds, vortices, misapplied pesticides, or animals. They don't do that. Forget that. So it's not some kind of weather phenomenon. It remains possible that it's some kind of an unnatural natural process, but then you have to get into the woo-woo world of Gaia spirits and stuff, maybe. Okay, in Alton Barnes, which is one of the areas there in England, 1990, there was this formation here. This is from the ground, this is from the air. And for the first time in this progression, straight lines were showing up and right angles. This one was 430 feet long. Whenever you see these pictures and you see these strange lines, they do things a little differently in England. They have tractors that follow these tram lines, and then they put out these big wings on either side, and they do pesticides and fertilizers and stuff like that. So these are where the tractor tires go, and typically it's 40 feet between tram lines. So if you took this thing and rotated it and then counted the number of tram lines, you can get an idea as to how big that one was. This one was 430 feet long. This is a formation called the Owl. Our essence for it is number 0907. And the interesting thing about this is if you think that these are mechanically made, then when you harvest the field, the formation will disappear. However, in this field, the next year, there's a ghost there of the same formation where it was the year before. So could they be mechanically bent? Well, there are some that are, because some of them are hoaxed. But this is the normal appearance of the joint area of, say, a wheat plant. But inside these formations, oftentimes you'll see they are bent there, and sometimes they're blown out as if there was some energy there that caused the sap in the joint of that plant to turn into steam and blow out. So they're not broken, they're bent by energy. It's an energetic process. There are also very interesting things that happen, such as the seeds in the formation germinate faster and they grow faster than the crop that is outside of the formation. So whatever that is, it would seem to me, should be of interest to farmers. 45%, mow it down. I don't think they're thinking straightly. So maybe they're pranks. I imagine a whole bunch of guys from the pub came out one night and just said, yeah, let's, 40, 80, 120, 300 feet across, shows up overnight, yeah. If you examine the soil underneath these formations many times, you'll find these little spherical balls of magnetic metal of a purity that can't be reproduced in laboratories. These pranksters are pretty good. Sometimes you find radiation in the soil around these. This is Barbara Lamb. She is a crop circle researcher of many years, and she led the group of 18 that we were part of in England this summer. And If you can see here, she's holding a couple of dowsing rods with handles, and on the ends of them she's got crystals, and she's a master dowser. And when she enters a formation that has authentic energy in it, these rods will flip out like that. And she is here, as well as these other folks, in a formation whose essence is called life force. The number is 1313. This is one that we seem to have helped manifest as a group of 18. We'll talk more about that. But you can see what happens to people. It's just, oh yeah, I think I'll sleep here. This is good. So it's subtle. But these agroglyphs contain some kind of energy, the energy that blows out the nodes, the subtle energy that makes people bask in it. And we all understand what Masaru Emoto in Japan has done for many years, and he showed that you can put a label on a bottle and say love on there and freeze it, and it looks pretty like that. And you put the same kind of bottle out and put a label on there that says hate, and you freeze that, and it looks like that. The water reacts to the energy and the intent and the environment around it. So given that idea, we should be able to take water with no previous memory and put it into glass bottles, take those into a formation, and let the energy that is in there get remembered in that water. We started doing this in 2002. These are some of the essences. They're over there on the table. We have 100 of them collected at this point. We personally visited a number of them this summer. Prior to that, Barbara Lamb was personally visiting all of these and taking the tours. I was teaching at a university, and the schedule of starting up the classes conflicted with the arrival of the crop circles, and we were not able to do it until this year when I retired from teaching. So we were using her collection methods. Oh yeah, years and years, and study them. She's very good at it. So we have determined that there are meanings in many of these, and it's very interesting to look at them and see. This one is 1103 starseed, and people looked at that and said, oh, well, it looks like a molecule. Well, it's a little deeper than that. If you go a little deeper, you find that the structure of that exactly represents the structure of the melatonin molecule. Why would they be saying anything about that? I mean, are they owned by some pharmaceutical companies trying to sell melatonin pills or something? What's the deal here? Well, as we started wondering what was going on with these essences and the energies in them, we started working with someone that many of you may know, and that's Angel Rose O'Grady, who is an Akashic reader. She reads the Akashic records for us, and we would ask her with each one of these 100, what is this, who made it, what's it for, how do you use it, what should we know about it, what are its characteristics, and she would do that thing. So with this one, we found some interesting things, and we'll talk about that. But what it led to was some things about melatonin, and we know that the melatonin production declines as we age, and we think that it's just about sleep, and melatonin is sold as a sleep aid, but the real reason for melatonin in your body is it cleans up free radicals, which are a natural offshoot of the cell division and repair that goes on all the time. If you let the free radicals build up in your body, it leads to all manner of diseases and cancer and diabetes and on, and all the things that we see rampant in our society. I'm not saying that all that is caused by lack of melatonin, but these free radicals are a difficult thing. That's why we encourage people to eat antioxidants and get some cinnamon in your diet and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing here is that radio frequency interference from cell phone towers confuses the pineal gland in your brain, which is our organic gland that tells our body whether it's daytime or nighttime. And if it doesn't get any stimulation from visual light, it says, oh, time to release the melatonin. But radio frequency from cell phone towers is really close to visual light. The pineal gland says, oh, I think it's still light. Oh, 24/7 light. Well, I guess I don't have to produce any melatonin at all. And it never gets released. The free radicals build up. This is a problem. So we all got to call up the cell phone companies and tell them to take down all the towers. So Right. This is the formation. There's the structure of the molecule. That's the three-dimensional view of it. Here's the melatonin. 1103 starseed is the energy that came from that. This is part of the Akashic reading from Angel Rose O'Grady. Melatonin has memory in it and will show what needs to be cleared. It aligns with solar energy. The sun is changing and life forms will need new chemicals to survive. So, interesting. What it meant to us after we got into this is, well, let's at least take melatonin every night, and if you can, and not everybody can deal with it, but take it if you can, and eat a lot of antioxidants and observe that somebody's trying to tell us something. This one here, Clay Hill, July 9th, several years ago, has a three-dimensional aspect to it. That's 1001 Secure Foundation over there. But it seems to be, if not exactly what Leonardo da Vinci was working with in the year 1500, at least a potential view of it or a view of a variation of it. And what we find in looking at these designs is that almost all of the designs are new in some way. They are not exact replicas of the temple or whatever, you know, but the features, there's primary features that seem to be extracted from geometry and fine art and all manner of things that people have done historically, and then those are refigured in some way and then reproduced in the fields. Okay. Well, Angel Rose indicates that there are tones that associate with these various formations. So there is a thing here. How do we channel the tones for formations? Well, I think that's something you'll know more about than I do. In England, there's a Southern Circular Research Group that worked with some of the fields over there. They used a psychic, they visualized a pattern, they played a tone, and they received a crop circle the next day. There's been several instances like that. This is Michael Glickman down here, and this formation here puzzled everybody for a while. But he was an architect, he still is. We met with him for some time this summer. He's a wonderful fellow. This is a formation that is expressing pi, which is one of the magic numbers of the universe. It's the ratio of the circumference to the diameter of a circle. So it's not like we didn't know pi, but what we didn't know was that someone is trying to show us that they know about pi too and put it into the field and let us figure it out. This is another agroglyph that estimates pi in a different way. This is 1007 Ark of the Covenant over on the table. Very interesting three-dimensional thing. And if you start looking at this, there's a little thin circle around this, which is this circle here. And you've got a hexagon inside of it, inscribed inside of it, and a hexagon inscribed on the outside of it. Well, this thing of inscribing geometric figures inside of circles, and circles inside of those, and so on, this is a process that goes back to Archimedes in 200 BC when he was trying to estimate the value of pi. If instead of using 6 there, you use 8 or 16 or 32, and you keep on doing it, you get closer and closer to pi. And this is what Archimedes was doing in 200 BC. This one happens to code the formulation of E equals mc squared. Each of these circles out here has a pattern of dots. This is the ASCII code for E equals mc to the power of 2. And what is this ASCII? If any of you were working with computers, you might remember what the ASCII code is. It is a human-based lexicon that takes sets of 8 ons and offs, bits, binary bits, and associates them with characters. It's the American Standard Code for Information Interchange. It is what runs our computers. When these happen, I think what they are saying is, by the way, we know how you communicate. We know how you compute. Here's something that you can understand because we're doing it in your language. ASCII codes, E equals mc squared. Oh, by the way, we understand physics as well. I think it's, again, beyond a prank. I want to talk just a moment about the golden ratio. or the divine proportion. It describes a rectangle with a length roughly about 1.62 times its width. And we see it in the Parthenon, we see it in the Mona Lisa. We've all seen the nautilus shell, we've seen the heads of sunflowers and other plants and things, and it works like this, and this is a mathematical spiral, and it's part of what's called the Fibonacci series. You start out with two numbers, 0 and 1. You add the last two that you've got to get the next one, and then you add the last two to get the next one, and so on. And if you follow this, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and always take the ratio of the last one to the previous one, it turns out to be 1.61. It's the golden ratio. It's just in nature. Here is a June 2010 agroglyph that shows the same golden ratio. If we start out here, and there's a 1, we're counting the number of rings coming out. We don't need to go through it, but there's 1 here, 6, 1, 8 coming out here, none there, 3, 3, 9, 9. That is the golden ratio spelled out inside of an agroglyph. So the question is, why would anybody be wanting to do that? What are they trying to tell us? Benoit Mandelbrot, you've probably seen this pattern behind him here. He died just a few years ago. He invented fractal geometry. And fractals you're probably familiar with. That is, the closer you get to something, the more it looks like what you just left. If you look at a shoreline from an airplane, and then you go down and you get into that bay and you look at the edge of the bay, it looks pretty much the same. You get in closer to that and put a magnify, it looks the same again. These recurring patterns at different levels is what fractals is all about. And he worked with this, and what he found after he'd been doing this many years is there was a spiritual dimension to fractal geometry. And we note that people have always used symbols to move beyond words and to transfer knowledge. So this is the left brain Mandelbrot mathematics. It's an iteration. You start out with a complex numbers. They're partly imaginary. You don't need to go into that, but you square what you had and add a constant to it. That gives you a new z. That one goes back into here. You square it and have the thing go round and round and round. Eventually, it comes in on something, and it's either on one side or the other of an arbitrary radius to a circle. If it's on one side, it's out here, and if it's on the other side, it's black and on the inside, and the edge is fractal. And if you took this picture and you just carved off this thing and blew it up and rotated it, you'd find this thing again. And on that one, all those little tiny pieces are the same way. It's the same structure as you go up and down in the scale. So, Mandelbrot, there is, oh my goodness, 1991. This showed up in the field over there. And the critics will say, yeah, but, you know, it's missing all the little, and look at all that, it's close enough. I mean, you can't get that detailed with wheat stalks. Okay, there's a fellow named Brett Parrott, who's an Australian. He's interested in crop circles. He was, in 2001, August 11th, he was at a place called Milk Hill. It's a field where things happen over there in Wiltshire County. And he was asking, he was getting tired of all the debunking going on, and he was basically talking directly in his intuitive way to the circle makers, whomever they are. And he said, we've got to have a really undeniably unhuman thing here to break loose on this whole thing. Please, you know, and do it in this field, Milk Hill. Do it tonight. I'll be back to check in the morning. You better have it or you're bogus, you know, and I'm checking out of this whole research business. So he came back in the morning. There was nothing there, so he got disgusted and left until he saw on the TV news this, which had shown up in Milk Hill during the night, after which he demanded that they do something. Why didn't he see it? Because he was in the flat area at the bottom of the hill. Everybody else was on top of the hill looking at this field and this formation in that field. But Brett was there. This showed up, And what we need to know about it is this, that it was told you how wide these were. This one is 3 football fields across. There's 409 perfect circles in this formation. Each one, if you measure the diameter, you get a prime number, which is a number that cannot be divided by any other number. It's a mathematical thing. Every one of these circles is exactly where it needs to be. It's totally symmetric. There are 6 arms. It looks like a galaxy of some kind. There's only 6 hours of darkness that time of year in that part of the world. It appeared during those 6 hours in the driving rain, in the dark, and there's no footprints. So he asked for something, and something showed up. And another thing that Michael Glickman says is you ask and you get more than you asked for. And that was the case here. Over a number of years, we worked with people around the world to intuitively evolve a color pattern for this formation. And this in the center there is the color of your crown chakra. And at the ends of your arms there is the red of the base chakra. And it seems to rotate or want to rotate in a counterclockwise direction. As you look down on it, it'd be clockwise if you lie on your back and look up, but that's all just naming conventions. It turned out to be a very powerful thing that has led to many things downstream. So, was it a response to Brett Parrott? It certainly seemed like it was. But every time you have one stimulus and one response, the skeptic says, well, one thing, you know, that's unusual. 2 things, you kind of raise an eyebrow. 3 in a row, maybe you've got something to look at. But these are single things, so ignore that. Ignore the little man behind the curtain pulling the levers. Okay, so a month before 9/11, these 2 gals, Judy Carroll on the left and Helene Kay, also were requesting a special formation from the circle makers. And they were, after this occurred, we asked them to talk to their people. They talked to some unusual folks. That's an upside down head right there. They talked to some unusual folks, and so we asked them to talk to them and ask, you know, what was this thing, this Milk Hill Formation? The answer that came back to us is that this is a healing mandala. This is a tool. And end of story. You humans figure it out. You know, they're not going to tell us. So when we were doing this colorization of this formation, we were unknowingly following the Glickman pattern of writing and rewriting and drawing and redrawing, and we were just doing that. And we brought the group, there was group energy that came in to this process. One of the things that came out of this was this swirling water. It's 0101 on the table over there. A single drop of it in a newly filled hot tub will keep it clean without chemicals for as long as you want until you feel out of general principles you ought to change the water. We've been going 2 years with ours, have put no chemicals in it. A neighbor of ours has been going 1.5 years. So this water is kind of special. Water that is influenced by the energies that were in that Milk Hill Formation. We have, working with these people in other nations, we have noticed some interesting aspects to this water. That cleaning the hot tub is an example of that. And we've asked people to take bottles of this, and as they go through the world, put a drop into the local stream, which goes into the bay, which goes into the river, which goes into the ocean. The oceans are all connected, and this is the water planet. Let's put our intentions into this, that this be a better world, and do this process. We now have 25 nations that have been doing this, putting this water into their surface waters, and Norway here just added this week. So this is an interesting thing that has been going on. Well, we need to rewind just a bit, since we're talking about the process here. And this is the Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico, and Carl Sagan here sent this message out to the cosmos in 1974, and it includes this kind of information, This is how we count. There's the binary number sequence. These are the atomic numbers for the chemicals in our bodies. These are the formulas for the numbers and design of the nucleotides in our DNA. This is what our two-strand DNA looks like. This is what we look like. This is 6 feet tall, small head, so on. This is how many of us there are. And this is where we live. There's the sun and Mercury and Venus, and boop, that's us. And these are the other ones. And this is how we sent you this message by way of that radio telescope. So that's what he sent out there. So we fast forward to a place called Chilbolton in England in 2000. And this radio telescope in England had this appearance in the year 2000 right next to it. And nobody knew exactly what that was, but it looked like this. It was all circles. So you go forward a year from there, August 21st, 2001. We have in the same field a face of some kind that is presented in a newspaper fashion. Small dot, big dot, stand back to see it. You can't see it on the ground. And this looks a lot like what Carl Sagan sent out. And what's down there? Probably a representation of what was in that same field a year earlier, almost to the same day. So this seems to be some kind of a communication. So their message is this, that they have the same mathematics, the same body chemistry, but silicon has been added. They're shorter, and they have bigger heads. In fact, that seems to be who's sending this one. And then down here, that seems to be how they sent it. That's their communication device. Okay. So we had an opportunity to work with startling evidence of contact, but instead we did that. 8/11, 8/21, the evidence was on the table, and so we had a decade of war and invasions and things like that. So when the towers were hit, within 15 minutes, there was a spike in the magnetic field of the planet observed by these geosynchronous satellites, indicating that the heart coherence of humans bonded together in shared sympathy and empathy and terror and horror and so on. Whatever that was with 9/11, it bound the whole world together at one point. And just, I'm not going to get into any conspiracy here, but these are facts that you ought to know. Jet fuel burns at 1,500 degrees. Structural steel melts at 2,700. Thermate burns at 4,500. And thermate residues were found in the rubble. And that's a very odd thing for an airplane to do. This appeared. Now that looks like another prank, but you can decode it with ASCII coding again, and we have to consider whether some guys with ropes and boards made this when nobody's looking, but you can see it spins out from the center like a CD, and these red ones here are byte boundaries between every 8 bytes. If you take the 8 bytes at a time and you look at it in an ASCII code table and you decode it, the first word there is beware. Oh, well, beware what? Well, it says, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises, much pain, but still time, believe. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Notice this rectangular thing here, and if you follow these lines, what you find here are TV towers. And this is a 60-line TV image. It goes left, right, bigger, fatter. This is how TV signals. Again, we know how you communicate. Here's something. Is that me? Is that you? What is that? I don't know. It looks a little alien to me. But in any case, I think we ought to go on to something a little bit more positive. Sometimes you find humor in these formations. This little alien head is smoking a pipe, and I think he's blowing his mind here. It's interesting. Here's another interesting little one. There was a crop circle researcher who painted this on the side of his van one year. The next year, this pattern showed up in one of the fields nearby, very close. And on top of that, they've picked up the icon from the Stargate series. That's a Stargate. So if this is a worm, that's a wormhole. And that's a joke, okay?
How large
This is 40 feet across here. So it's about 80 feet across. All right. So we have an opportunity here to create a theory and work with it. This is what scientists do with theories. You propose it in detail, you apply it to a case, you predict what's going to happen, you check the result, and you confirm the theory. So our theory is that agroglyphs are responsive to human intention. We are not saying and they're made by Arcturians or anything, but that's a possibility, but that's not the theory here. This is about responsiveness. So here's our group of 18. We had this opportunity to be with them and go into various places like Stonehenge there. This is Barbara in the purple right in front here. And we asked on the first night that we were there, and these gals will get into the details of this very shortly, we asked all 18 of us to meditate on an image like this, an equilateral cross in a diamond. And the necessary parts would be those two things, the diamond shape and the prominent cross. So on the night that we did this, this pattern appeared in a field that we didn't see until a couple of days because it takes a little while. It's called a grip patch. It's number 1313 life force. There's the cross and there's the diamond shape. So that's one thing, you can ignore that. Well, the next day we were in a circle that Pam will talk about in a minute, and we did another manifestation of the diamond cross. That night this thing appeared across from Stonehenge. There's the cross, there is the diamond, and all of these inscribed circles inside of squares, etc., is another one of those mathematical things. It turns out in our group of 18 there were a number of retired mathematicians who said, oh, that's inscribing circles and squares and stuff. And remember I talked about Archimedes and all that stuff and estimating pi? Well, before you do the 6, you do the 4. This is the 4. This is the simplest estimation of pi. Also that same night, this showed up. This is the only photograph in the world of it because the farmer was caught in the act of destroying the awful thing. And then it was gone. So we didn't have a chance to visit it, but there's the cross, and if you connect the points of the cross, there's the diamond. We have 3 diamond crosses occurring in a couple of days. I looked through the 478 or so, whatever it is, reported crop circles in England from 2001 through 13, found these 12 diamond cross formations. Some of them you might say that's not very much of a diamond cross, in which case it's a stronger case, but these are the ones I found. So 12 of the 768 is about 2%, a little bit less than 2%. So 2% were diamond cross agroglyphs. So the probability that you would have 3 such formations is 2% of 2% of 2%, which is highly significant. It's way out in the tail of expectation. So statistically, this is very strong. This is like taking a random sample of 4 people out of a big crowd and they're all over 7 feet tall. You didn't tell me the Harlem Globetrotters were in town. I mean, there's something that's going to explain that. That's not a random thing. This was not a random process. So it's like pulling 4 aces from a deck. It's the same probability. You shuffle up the deck, pull out 4 cards, all aces. You shoot somebody if that happens in a poker game. So this is non-random. So this is our preferred understanding of what went on here. We are not alone. They are our friends. They responded to us, and we are communicating with them. So I'm going to turn this over to my able right-brained people who will take it from there.